All right. So this is a friend of mine by the name of Bobby Hugh. Although I have to call him Robert. Bobby was in my brother's class, graduated from St. John's Mississippi in 1973. He went on to get his bachelor's degree in marketing at Southern Miss. And he started as a Domino's franchiser in North Carolina somewhere around 1980. Started out as a pizza flip, did deliveries. Then they put him in the management program and urged Bobby to start opening franchises, to which point they said they would help, and they did. So Bobby showed up at the 50th anniversary of my brother's reunion for St. John's, and Bobby is just still Bobby, even though I have to call him Robert now when he'll return my phone calls. So he was one of the dirtiest guys in the locker room. He never washed his practice uniform. He could stand his pants up in the corner after the ball. Anyway, so we asked Bobby how he's doing, and he said, pretty good. And they asked, how many franchises you've got now for Domino's? And he said, 54. And I asked, well, how much is that worth? And he said, I'm not sure about the franchises, but the land's worth about $168 million. So Bobby Hughes did well in franchising. He said he's probably going to sell those in a couple of years. He still will keep his 17 slushy franchises. I'm not even sure what those are, but anyway. But that's Bobby with a bachelor's degree, coming right out of college, with a certain amount of entrepreneurism in his heart. And that's how success is achieved. And I could probably argue that that success can only be achieved when doing franchising. All right. So Doc Vreeland, my teacher, was a big guy in franchising in the 70s. And he used to say that it's the best way to have lots of money and little brains and still be a success, or the other way around. Franchising is not an American model, but it is a pretty darn good one. It's one that achieves enormous success. So what is franchising? Important definitions coming up. If you were to go to the McDonald's franchise, the one that's over near the corner there, and if you were to be able to get in and out within 10 minutes, lucky. But if you go to the drive-up window, you'll see this little plaque there that says operated by such and such corporation with an email address and a phone number. So the franchising structure is not one organization, it is two. Franchising is a marketing structure intended to convince the end users they're buying from a vertically integrated organization when they're not. This is a test question, this one right here. Everybody picks their head. Hold up, playing Gallagher. Franchising, the hallmark of it is a deliberate loss of a separate identity. It is two organizations, and the lower organization willingly gives up its unique identity in order to gain the advantages of the franchise itself. And so in franchising, you have two groups. The corporate group, which is the franchisor, S-O-R, corporate headquarters, and then the franchisee, which is the downstream partner. And so we would look at it as this way. And then the consumer. Because consumers perform channel functions, okay? Think of the franchisers as the upstream manufacturers. Think that there is no warehouse in the middle, and that gets you where you want to go, except that a franchisee, their loss of identity is considered vital. Two separate companies, two different balance sheets, two different income statements, different missions, different market strategies, but there's synergy in there. There's consistency that keeps these two organizations working together. And so you have two independent businesses. They form all the marketing functions to their mutual benefit, and the franchisees compromise their independence. You don't know that you're not talking to, or you probably do. Franchising is a great way to grow, especially if you're a franchisor. Many times what you can do is you can use franchising to grow your corporation, find independent buyers, and then you can, in essence, buy those franchisees out and become wholly company owned. It is quite simply the fastest growing form of retailing because, quite simply, it eliminates many of the major barriers that can stop corporations from growing. It is a very efficient structure. So, what are the benefits to the franchisees? I am an individual. I want to be able to grow with a corporation. And I want to be able to do it in my own way, in my own fulfillment. I have a certain amount of money that I want to be able to invest. But there are great difficulties in starting any business. Anybody run a business? It's wait till you have to file your first 941 quarterlies. All right. It's a humbling experience, believe me. Okay. But one of the first things for a franchisee is personal fulfillment. You have the risk involved with starting the businesses, but you also have the big shoulders of a corporation to kind of help you out. Franchises, their fees can be as small as $18,000, which is what a Subway franchise was, to up to $1 million for a McDonald's franchise, at which point you're saying, why do I need to spend $1 million? I mean, if I have $1 million, maybe I should just keep it. So the franchisers come in. They have a business format, a prepackaged set of solutions to all of their problems, okay? That's one of the great things that a franchise does. We've seen it before. This happens. We've got 1,000 franchises across the United States. We're collecting data on all of these things that are happening. Know where you might have problems. 3 benefits especially is the startup package. So the startup package is composed of 3 things. Site selection, where we're going to put it. brand name of the organization. And then the big advantage, especially for the franchisor, is the economies of scale. And we're going to talk about these one at a time. So, anybody want to guess how much that land where McDonald's is costs? How much would you think? Property value in Boone. Think about Boone now, especially. Now it's inflated, so I'm giving you last year's price. Who knows what it might be now? Yeah. That's not bad. It's actually 2 million, but it's got to be probably higher than that now. Now, the corner where the Wendy's is, that property's 4.5. Yeah, that little Wendy's, by the way, is, I think of what I've read, the number 1 Wendy's franchise in Western Carolina. I mean, there's a reason why it's 2 stories high. Okay. Apparently that little corner is very productive. Now, think of if you are a franchisee, you're just trying to start out. Just imagine trying to foot the bill for the cost of that land. $4.5 million. How could you possibly afford it? Well, one of the things that a franchisor gives to the franchisee is site selection. They help the owners with the business and the contracts. So if I were to go into business and say, oh, I just got the franchise for McDonald's, the local real estate would say, where do we sign? Let's get this done now. You have the big shoulders of a large corporation, such as McDonald's, lending a hand. Now, also realize this, site selection is important depending on the type of business you have. So Enterprise Rent-A-Car, they did not build their success around being around airports. Enterprise Rent-A-Car was the second car that you rented. This is their business format. The second car you rented when your car is in the shop or you want to use it for travel. And that's how they started. So Enterprise, when they select where they're supposed to be, they generally select it in neighborhoods. And who knows what happened when they selected that one in Boone, but that's like one of the craziest places in the world to try to turn left. But they assign a territory. They allow the franchise to build whenever you please. By the way, that's another thing. McDonald's owns the land. The franchisee owns the building. Boy, that's a great arrangement. But it's what you call the golden handcuffs that keeps you connected together. All right. So that's the first thing you get is site selection. The next is you've got that brand name. And then the last thing is the economies of scale, and that is both upstream and downstream. So think of it this way. So we have the franchisor, but think about all of the other franchisees, all right? The franchisors become collectors of all of the services and the material that is used in the production of their goods. And so the franchisor pools all of those resources together, build them to scale, and then the goods that are transported down to the franchisees are all in a prearranged, prepackaged kind of situation. It means that there is elimination of waste for the franchisor and for the franchisee as well. It's a great solution. It really is. Not only that, but the franchisee, once again, with the franchisor, with their backing, is out there saying, these are my buddies. your credit rating just went from whatever you want to say, but at least 150 points higher. And so that is the advantages. Site selection, the brand name, it allows the clientele to quickly build. And then finally, the economies of scale. That is in the startup package. But it is important to note, and this will be another test question, that franchising is not a system for launching a business. It is a system for running a business. The purpose of a franchise is to run a business, not launch it. So if you have ever been a franchisee, I worked with Radio Shack when it was still live. One of the things that we used to do every afternoon is that we would total up all of the transactions we had, and we would upstream it to Radio Shack. So this is 1983. Oh my God, 4 years ago. Anyway, so the way we would do it is we would total up the things, put it in our computer, our Tandy computer. It would bundle it all together and then send it upstream on a 300 baud modem. And after about 5 minutes of transmission, it would finish. Now, imagine 4,000 franchises doing the same thing every day. One of the requirements franchises have is they have to submit management reports daily, weekly, and monthly. Think about a McDonald's, 6,000 franchises. Every day that information is being sent up. And then think about the artificial intelligence programs that are managing inside of McDonald's and anticipate. That is a lot of information to be able to come up with accurate data. Those super smart machines can tell when franchisees are in trouble. They can see when you're in the negative in certain locations. And then the very next thing that happens is franchisors do not want franchisees to fail. So they assist them, help them get on their feet, and hopefully build towards something better. And so this is one of the ongoing benefits of being a franchisee. Franchisors act as gatekeepers. They allow the individual franchisees to specialize in a given field. And we're going to talk about two types of franchise, product name franchising and business format franchising. And they both pretty much focus on the same thing, is that the franchisors specialize in one particular way. So we talked about intra-competition and inter-competition. In franchises, we don't necessarily have that, all right? You don't have free riding because the franchises basically have certain guaranteed geographic areas where they service that particular group. And so intra-brand competition doesn't exist. It makes sure that the brand is consistent. So Holiday Inn, anybody ever been to a Holiday Inn? Ever been to one that was different from the other Holiday Inns? Holiday Inns used to have the exact same pattern. There were like 2,000 in the United States, and it was the exact same pattern. You could close your eyes and know where the bathroom is in the lobby. Their phrase was, the best surprise is no surprise. And actually what happened is they understood, well, people like a little surprises. You don't have to be the same anywhere. But the one thing that Holiday Inn never wanted to do was lose their consistency, all right? Consistency creates brand equity. And so there's certain minimum standards that I would expect every one of you to have when they would be going in any hotel. Hopefully clean sheets, all right? Hopefully a clean bathroom, although never sleep on the top sheet of a bed. We all know that one. Okay. So anyway, franchisors give franchising a competitive advantage by eliminating many of the difficulties and mistakes that happen in a traditional format. They have size, they have scope, which is synergy, which means you're all moving in the same direction. So what about the franchisor? I'm a corporation. I've got to grow. I've got a good idea, but that idea can be stolen. You know, that's just the way it is. A franchisor, when they franchise, can gain the first mover advantage and amortize their investment very quickly by reaching out to investors, and that's what a franchisee is. The growth happens because the franchisors seek out individuals with money who are willing to invest. Usually that is in the form of a franchise fee with other things as well. What the franchisees do is they bring the financial resources and the power available, and the franchisees actually become conduits for the franchisors to bring management up the stream. And so think of it this way: if I'm a franchisor, I have people in the franchise that are competent, but they also might be good as franchisees as well. The franchisor and the franchisee creates a two-way conduit for talent to travel both upstream to corporate and downstream to the franchisees. The McDonald's CEO from 2006 to 2011 was a graduate of McDonald's University. He literally was a hamburger flip. And the first thing he did when he became a McDonald's, the CEO, one is he traveled to every state in the United States and went to McDonald's there. And the second thing he did was he invested in the ingredients, because once again, it's always about the ingredients. And the third thing he did also was do the coffee thing, which I thought was brilliant too. So, but that all happened because this was an individual who was in the franchisees as first. So, as a franchisor, you can incentivize the staff. You make them residual claimants of the firm's profits. It means that the franchisee has a dedicated interest in making the organization rise because it is consistent. Franchisees also provide vision to local circumstances. So the fish sandwich, living in Louisiana, the fish sandwich came from Louisiana. So from the start of the day after Mardi Gras, Ash Wednesday, you have what are known as the 40 days of Lent. Louisiana is strongly oriented towards Catholicism, and so they have the schedule of Lent. And one of the things about traditional Catholics is you don't eat meat on Friday. And so what the McDonald's in Louisiana found was that individuals were going to eat fish on Friday, and so they came up with, one of the McDonald's came up with a fish sandwich. That's why we have a fish sandwich today. The franchisor gathers that information that they find out from the franchisees. They come up with the best ideas and they set those across the franchisees, and they become test subjects as well. The McRib is a classic example. It's the same one. Franchisors also have the ability of doing short run things like the McRib, because you can only take about 2 weeks of a McRib and then that's it. So they do the short runs of the McRibs and then get them out of there. And so this is one of the better aspects, is that they harness the entrepreneurial spirit. So this is an example. So William Heineke wanted to open a franchise Pizza Hut in Bangkok. And there is a cultural inhibition towards cheese. And so he went ahead, signed the fees, signed the contract, went ahead and made an enormously successful franchise. And he's doing bad because that is the thing that a franchisor can do. They can solve problems like this and test things in markets that don't damage the general overall environment. And once again, let me be contra and say there are many reasons why you don't want to franchise, and Starbucks is a classic example. Starbucks did not want to expand too quickly, which is almost a joke when you consider how many Starbucks are out there. But one of the difficulties in a franchise system is that quite simply things can get away from. But here's one reason or one example when it was better to have franchisees than to just have none at all. So Subway came up with the brilliant idea that they were no longer going to deliver daily to their franchisees. All of the food that is in the Subway is delivered fresh every day. Well, they decided they were going to start doing it once every 5 days. Can you imagine if you're a franchise where your slogan is eat fresh and now it's eat 5 days old? And the franchisees erupted. They said no way, and it went away. So I want to show you kind of, let's see, where is it? Okay. So anybody want to guess who this guy is? Can anybody, let's do that again. This guy name is Duncan Hines. You ever heard that name? Anybody? If you go into the food section of your local supermarket and you go look for cake mixes, you're going to see the name Duncan Hines there. Now, Duncan Hines had nothing to do with cake, but his name became synonymous with excellence, and he was able to sell his name as a symbol of superiority. Okay, so Duncan Hines, he and his wife traveled over the United States during the 30s. And during his time, he had to sleep in locations and eat at places before there were such things as franchises. And so Duncan Hines was someone, he and his wife, who wanted to make sure that they knew where the best places were. So he kept notes. He kept copious notes about where were clean places to go to hotels, where to night good places to eat. Remember, this is also a time when there were no franchises like a Marriott and the others, and most of the hotels and eateries were local. So he kept these notes for a long time, and then he was at a party in the early 40s, and his friend looked at all of the notes and they said, "You got to write a book." And so he did. He wrote 2 books. One, the Duncan Hines Guide to Healthy Eating, and the other, the Duncan Hines Guide to Good Hospitality. He became famous. His word was like gold. Duncan Hines was the first great influencer. All right, I want you to think of that. Duncan Hines was an individual in the communication media of the day where if they said something was good, if he said, then it was golden, and then it would have enormous success. So Duncan Hines happened to be traveling through Kentucky, and he went to this particular place, and there was a gentleman there, an elderly person, who was serving everyone, who was cooking everything too. He was kind of working out of his home, and he was right next to a truck stop, so he had a fairly good amount of business. Duncan Hines mentioned that this was some of the best food he had ever eaten, and it was very reasonably priced. And so that man was Colonel Sanders. So Harlan Sanders started his work with his first Social Security check. He was a failure all of his life. So this was the last thing that he could do because quite simply he was forced to do it. Now around this time also in the 40s and 50s, he started doing the exact same thing that the guy who started Chick-fil-A did. He found he could cook chicken faster if it was cooked with a pressure cooker. And the chicken sandwich at Chick-fil-A is very much in the same way. So is the chicken with Harlan Sanders. The one thing about Harlan Sanders was, for him, the number one, two things: cleanliness and ingredients. Everything else was second place. He was met. They had talked about franchising. He started the franchise movement. He became his own personal salesperson. He came up with the whole idea of the suit and everything. He was notorious for cleanliness. The legends are is that he would pull into a franchise if he saw any kind of uncleanliness. He would shut the franchise down. Then there were legends of him throwing the pots out into the middle of the street. Who knows if it's not, but it's a great story. All of the things that were in a Kentucky Fried Chicken, because that's what KFC meant, in a Kentucky Fried Chicken, they were all stainless steel. And they all had to be cleaned immaculately before the next day. Now, this person standing next to him said every important lesson that he ever learned about running a franchise, he learned from Harlan Sanders. He was an orphan. He started working at a KFC when he was 14 years old, right? He could have gotten in trouble in that time. But they trusted him then. He became a manager when he was 19. He became one of the first owners of a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise, went on to win many awards, and started his own franchise. Let me see if I have the slide. He became the founder of Wendy's, Dave Thomas. And so Dave Thomas, he said the most important lessons, as I said, were cleanliness and ingredients, and he started Wendy's. Wendy's actually is the name of his 3-year-old daughter at the time. She had learning disabilities, and one of the few words that she could say was Wendy, and that became Wendy's. And so that is the picture of the little girl. Dave Thomas went on for a brilliant career. He was an orphan. He set up organizations to encourage adoption. He created a giant organization at the end of his life to take care of that. He was by every aspect a very decent human being. And all of this career stuff, all of this success happened because of the franchise structure, which allowed individuals like Dave Thomas and Harlan Sanders to be able to go out there and achieve their success, all because of that. This is also kind of thing, all of these things are connected. This is one of the reasons why we also want you to network, because you never know the individuals you meet on your way are going to be the people that help you achieve the most success. All right, let's go enjoy Snowmageddon. We're leaving. We'll finish up franchising on Tuesday, and we will look to the test Tuesday week, okay? Not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, okay?